Welcome, everybody,
To another
to
exciting episode. Yep.
Beers and Bytes, Season 3. Can't believe it, we made it already to Season 3. Here we are, Episode 1, with our special guest, Paul Valente, who's the CEO and co-founder of
VISO
VISO
Trust.
Trust. I knew that, I promise.
So hi, I'm Paul, CEO and co-founder of VISO Trust. Really excited to be here on Beers and Bytes today. And prior to founding VISO Trust, I've been the CISO at several organizations. I was the CISO at Restoration Hardware, Lending Club, ASAP, and spent decades on third-party cyber risk management. VISO Trust was founded in 2020 after starting to work on thought leadership and prototyping and patenting and research in this space since 2017 with my co-founder Russ Sherman to transform TPRM and digital trust with AI. And anyway, delighted to be here with you today.
Appreciate it. Great to meet you. Guess I'll go next. Jeremy Murdishaw. It's one of the co-founders and the CEO and CISO for Fortify, 24/7 managed security services provider, MDR, XDR services, baby.
Damn, I can't beat that. All right. Chris Jordan, CEO, co-founder of Fluency Security. We're a data analytics company that does security. Mostly the work we do is SIMs, if people knows what a SIM is. And yeah, that's all we do. So it's exciting. We're going to be releasing a new product in a couple months, and we'll cover it probably in a future episode.
All right. So, as is our tradition, we're going to talk about our beers or our beverages, depending on your mood today. Paul, let's start off with you. What did you bring?
So I brought an Dawn Golden from Athletic Brewing. Here's the can here.
Nice.
And then I've got here's the actual
results.
So cheers.
Cheers. Chris, what do you have today?
You know, I like Vasen. You know, I've been hitting the Vasen. This Festa. Now Vasen, when I bought it, the guy goes, you know, this is a top 5 beer in the world. I'm like, damn. Now they're down in Charlottesville, I should say, Virginia. And it's excellent beer. It's Jeremy. It's like go-to normally with the Festa night.
Wow.
Yeah, and normally go for the they have a what do you call that? Hefeweizen. So this is my first time. Yeah, this is my first time trying this one, but solid beer. It's a hard one to get though. I have to go to like boutique kind of wine shops that have a beer fridge, and unfortunately this guy's fridge is like dead. So because the fridge doesn't work, he gave me a $2 discount.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, it's become my favorite place. I really hope that refrigerator keeps broken.
And I also hope your beer's not skunky because of that.
Oh, no. Actually, you know, it was still being delivered when I got there. I'm like,
fresh off the boat.
Oh, my God. Somebody should have something like a drop notice. Yeah.
Wow. So I got a Goose Island beer company. I got the Neon Beer Hug.
Wow.
It's a little bear. Tall boy. It's got 10,000 volts.
10,000 volts.
We'll see if it tastes good or not. So, cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's talk some tech.
Let's talk tech. So, tell us about yourself, Paul.
So about myself. So I've been a technologist for a long time. I actually started working with computers as a job, kind of serendipitously as a kid. Really, it just kind of happened. And my first real kind of enterprise security experience came working for city government. That's where my first job after kind of transitioning from several years of consulting and working with small businesses was essentially doing network administration for city government. And this was, I guess, the late 90s. And so I was doing things like putting some of the first computers in police cars and working on early metropolitan area networks. So really early wireless that was horribly unreliable, and things like that. And also got a chance to, work on firewalls and dispatch computers and crime computers, things like that. And that's really where I got an interest in security. I went from there to teaching at night and weekends, college courses in security, just because there was such a shortage of expertise. They would hire people without degrees like myself who actually left school to teach school. Um, and then after that, I moved into financial services and spent the majority of my career since then in the private sector. Um, at companies, like I worked for a while at a Bank of America subsidiary. I worked at Lending Club for a long time, also at technology companies too. And as I mentioned in the intro, spent a lot of time dealing with third-party cyber management. I'm sure we'll talk about that more later, but obviously that's been a passion of mine for quite some time, and ultimately got me and my co-founder into founding VISO Trust. Outside of that, I'm a father. I've got 3 boys. Like it or not, they're wonderful, of course, but a little more diversity would have been great. And they range in ages. So I've got a 5-year-old all the way up to a 14-year-old. So that's a delight of mine. And other than that, I like to play music. I'm a guitarist as well. So that's me. Yeah.
Nice. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. We're excited to have you as our first guest here in season 3. So
Kicking it off. It's a pleasure to be here. Great to
yeah,
be here with you, Jeremy and Chris.
awesome. So what is VISO Trust? And is it VISO, VISO? What's the proper
This supposed to
pronunciation?
this rhyme with CISO? Is it supposed to be VISO?
So we say VISO.
Oh,
We hear everything though. VISO, 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 VISO. What we don't like to hear is VISIO. It's definitely not VISIO. The other ones are kind of permissible, and of course, as we like to say, paying customers can pronounce it however they like, right?
Of course.
In any case, yeah, we say VISO, and VISO is a SaaS platform that essentially allows companies to assess third parties in minutes using a suite of AI-based tools, much more accurately than they ever could prior, in a much more scalable way. Yeah, it's also a digital trust platform as of recently as well, allowing companies to respond to trust queries in a highly automated way as well, using AI.
So what makes it different, or what is your differentiator in the market space? It's kind of becoming a crowded space now. You've got big players like Valente coming in who kind of offer that full end-to-end service.
Yeah. So third-party cyber risk management in particular has been fairly stagnant for the last 20 years. Really, when I first started working in the space, I was working for a what we called then an application service provider, a company that was selling essentially what we now call a SaaS model, corporate social responsibility solutions, to Fortune 1000 companies, essentially 250 of the Fortune 1000, the largest companies in the world. And for each of those, we had to undergo an assessment, right, from a security or risk standpoint. And, back then, companies were really averse to the idea of sending data outside of their 4 walls, right? Salesforce was kind of the pioneer in SaaS, and they were still only working with small companies back then. They weren't an enterprise play yet. And so I would receive 3,000 questionnaires, from companies. And I was faced with the problem of, okay, do I hire another security person to help make our security program more robust? Or do I hire another security person to answer questionnaires, right? And I had to do the latter at that time. Now, of course, we built a great program in whatever way we could, but for the past 20 years, there's been essentially 2 ways, with some kind of minor modifiers, to assess third parties. You could send them a questionnaire, which is what I just described, right? Which there's lots of problems with that. Today, more than 50% of companies won't respond to questionnaires. So you're going to have great gaps in your visibility just from that. And then the second major problem is that questionnaires are highly biased, right? You never know who's filling out that questionnaire. More often than not, it's a salesperson or a BDR, a junior salesperson, right? Who's essentially saying, "Hey, boss, what I need to say for us to get the deal here, right? Yes, 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 or whatever that might be." Rarely is it somebody highly qualified, and never is it somebody objective from a bias standpoint, right? Because they're obviously highly incentivized to give positive responses. The third and final issue with questionnaires is that they're labor intensive and slow. They have to be triaged. There's lots of back and forth clarification. Oh, they said no, but they didn't fill in the comments. Or the answer says yes, but the comments say no, right? There's lots of interpretation analysis. It's very painful on both sides, right? The second thing that essentially came to be because questionnaires are so problematic is security ratings. I'm sure both of you guys are familiar with security scorecard, and our listeners, of course, security scorecard, BitSite, there's probably 20 of those companies now. Companies like Black Kite, PandaRays, UpGuard, there's new ones every day, right? And they're all essentially using various flavors of open source intelligence to try and garner some idea outside in of companies' security posture. Now, what's the problem? Well, the problem is that they are based on what you can attribute publicly to companies, which is their public-facing marketing websites. By and large, the majority of companies, especially B2B companies that you want to assess, their website is not connected to their production infrastructure. It's not connected to their corporate infrastructure. In fact, it's not connected to anything that's relevant to the real security posture of that company,
Yep.
right? And so the data is of highly limited usefulness. Now, the good news for those companies and their customers is that you can pull up something on any company immediately, right? You don't have to go through the work of doing a TPRM assessment, right? So if you're in a world where from a compliance standpoint, something is better than nothing, well, that's the appeal of those tools, right? I can pull something and say, hey, I did something. I sent them a note that said their score was bad. Check the box, right? I did something, right? And so that's really the problem we solve. I know that you mentioned like the Dratas and the Vantas of the world. And for us, those are actually one of many different data sources. So those companies do automated compliance, allowing companies to automate their process of getting a SOC 2 or getting an ISO or a high trust, and of documenting their program and collecting evidence, right? Making that faster, more efficient, sometimes cheaper, and putting them in a position to try and demonstrate trust, right? Maybe with a trust page. And so the portals that those companies provide, the APIs that they provide, the reports that they provide, the data they provide is all one of many data sources for us, where for us, getting to our unique differentiator is a unique technology that's patented since 2017 called artifact intelligence, which is an AI-based set of tools that allow us to assess any company using artifacts of their security program that already exist. Those artifacts range from security policies and standards to pen test, to SOC reports, to vulnerability scans, to trust portals, to public information, whatever is available, to allow us to analyze those artifacts, determine their assurance levels, extract all relevant control information, and populate a very robust standards-based risk assessment that references over 25 different frameworks, with really only 5 minutes required of time, of the user. It's highly automated. So that's essentially what's different about us, is artifact intelligence and the ability to use AI to assess companies based on real evidence and artifacts of the security program that already exist.
5 minutes. I mean, that's
5 minutes.
That is a CIO's or CISO's dream, if you can demonstrate that.
You bet.
How does that
You
work?
bet. Yeah. So you pick a company from a directory of over 2.5 million, and even if it's not in there, it takes you 30 seconds to create. You're then essentially you're then given a very simple interface for defining what we call the business context. So third-party risk management and inherent risk in particular is not one size fits all, right? Different companies are going to be using different products and services from the same company. They're going to be sharing different data right? That's all going to mean different context, different risk. But in our system, which it makes this super easy and super user-friendly, you configure the business case, which is the unique way that we're working together. It's just a couple of clicks, but in the background, the system actually models based on NIST 800-30 and NIST 800-53 over 8,000 different data points to uniquely determine the attack surface of that relationship, therefore the likelihood in the risk model of breach, and also dynamically the controls that would be in scope for residual risk assessment. It then prompts you for the data that is could be impacted, that's in scope for this relationship, right? And for that, we've built a taxonomy of data types that works across industry vertical based on a deep study of the cost of breach. And it takes into account various data privacy regulations from across the globe, various types of industry-specific regulations on data. Again, it's also very simple and completely customizable, but very few customers do. It's very valuable out of the box. That allows us to model the impact of breach based on data, right? So that immediately gives you an inherent risk score. That's like, this is what I just described is like 30 seconds on the platform, literally. And then in a couple more clicks, you can kick off an assessment. There's a couple ways that an assessment can be done. It's flexible because you've got different use cases with different vendors. But the most common and what's typically the most labor intensive prior to VISO is entering a third-party contact, perhaps the sales rep, right? And clicking start assessment, which invites them to the platform and collects information from them that augments what we've collected publicly, and typically only takes them about 5 to 10 minutes. But after that click, I'm done in terms of being on the practitioner side after I click that start assessment button. Now, for companies where you're dealing with like a portal like AWS, you can just drag and drop artifacts from the portal. We give you guidance on what artifacts we look for, and they'll be instantly assessed. Obviously, the platform has seen all those artifacts, a bazillion times already from other customers as well. But in any case, in terms of that vendor experience, it's also the easiest, simplest, most streamlined approach for vendors. In fact, we get like love letters from vendors on the platform that have said, oh, I've been on every different platform, I've been assessed every which way, and this was the easiest ever. And why? It's because they're brought into a web-based adaptive flow that essentially asks them for whatever artifacts they have in their program, right? Which is going to vary depending on the maturity of their program, right? Also, what we need is going to vary depending on that business case and what controls are in scope too, right? But it's an adaptive flow that's purpose-built to allow us to assess any company, regardless of size, industry vertical, region, even language. Many of our customers have a global footprint, so the platform supports a wide variety of standards and languages. In any case, they'll be prompted through that adaptive flow to provide artifacts and evidence of the security program, the same things you would use to measure and monitor and create and evidence your own security program. The platform consumes those artifact intelligence runs and produces the assessment.
Sounds pretty amazing.
For folks that have been doing this the way we all did it for the last 20 years, it really is. It's a new paradigm and a completely new way that solves the two things that I saw as the major issues in this space. One, data quality. How do we get good quality data that is not only like, do you say you have controls in place, but gives us a real measure of the assurance of those controls, right? And then the second thing is scale, right? Because companies rely on so many third parties nowadays. In some ways, arguably, for many companies, cybersecurity, third-party security is turning into all of cybersecurity because their technology footprint is nearing 100% third party, right? You can't hire a bazillion analysts, and really the last thing you want to do is put your best security architects on TPRM, right? So it has to be highly automated. It has to be fast. It has to be scalable. That fast piece is important too, because you want to get this data when you're thinking about working with a third party. You don't want to get it like when your business owner already invested 6 months in building project plans with this company, and where you're going to have to torpedo a top line revenue initiative to avoid a bad vendor, right? I mean, last thing you want to do is inject business risk, paint yourself as the department of no, and like get yourself canned. I mean, that's what happens to CISO. That's the 18 to 24 months, right? Oh, they weren't aligned with the business, with the needs of the business, right? So, we all know that story. And so to be a good business partner, you've got to be like, yeah, bring me the 10 vendors that you're thinking about. And in a couple of days, I'll have back all the security data on all of them. I'll have the recommendations for you and integrate that into your selection process. So no more like, I'm the bad guy. I'm going to throw the brakes on everything. I'm going to, like, 2 weeks before you go live, I'm going to drag you before the risk committee and tell the world that we shouldn't move 1,000 people to a new call center that's going to save us $100 million next year, right? No, because they're not secure enough, right? I mean, the business always makes the same decision anyway. Am I going to roll the dice with something that could have a pretty major impact, but might not happen, right? Or am I gonna roll the dice on the business where I'm like definitely not going to make all that money that I was going to make otherwise, right? Well, that's an easy choice, right? I'm gonna take the risk and I'm gonna make all the money, right?
Yes.
They have to make that choice. That's their job as as revenue bearing executives, right? So yeah, it's a very, very different way, and unlocks really a power to have a meaningful TPRM program rather than just a security theater or check the box sort of program.
And for those uninitiated listeners, the acronym TPRM is
third party risk management. Yeah, thank you for that. And probably for many of our listeners, third party security management, vendor security, third party cyber risk management, etc. Yeah.
All right, Chris, what's on your mind, sir?
Let's do the easy ones. Thank God Paul's drinking. Sometimes we do these and the guest doesn't drink.
We find that
I saw the beers and Bytes. I mean, I did forget the Bytes, but I mean, I had to bring the beer, right?
Well, the Bytes is the technology discussion, right? That's our angle there.
There we go. That must be the beer slowing me down a little bit there.
Well, that makes the conversation more fun as time goes on.
Oh yeah. Please. All right. So one of the easy questions we can ask is, what is third-party risk?
Yeah. So third party, so companies rely on third parties to do business, right? By and large, third parties, they either make us money or they make us more efficient at making money, right? And today there's a bazillion companies that do everything that we do, but better in a much more specialized way. So companies essentially need to take advantage of the core competencies and the innovations of other companies in order to stay innovative themselves, right? So if you're, let's say, a CIO or a CTO, one of the most valuable things you do for your company is you find other companies, other products and services and technologies that are cutting edge in their special way to optimize your business, right? But when you share sensitive data or access with third parties, which you pretty much have to do with many third parties today in order to take advantage of their products and services, that brings risk, right? It increases your attack surface. It essentially increases exponentially the number of ways that you could be, your organization could be penetrated by attackers, right? And so third-party risk is essentially the process of ascertaining, measuring the risk of third parties, evaluating that, and using that in your decision-making process with regard to if and indeed how you're going to do business with them.
So, you talk about taking a look at the artifacts, which from an assessment point of view, we'd call evidence, right? And the question would be, well, why did you choose third party and not first party? Why did you choose, say, you know what? I remember being over at Lending Tree and I wish someone would just do a quick assessment, like, give me a hint of what I should be doing. So, I mean, is it that good? Would you say, hey, you know what? If you're too lazy, hire us for a first party assessment, right? You take us to look at your own issues instead of somebody else's.
That's really an interesting question. And it's actually always been part of the vision and part of the roadmap. And actually today we have a number of trust features which are focused at essentially enabling you to take your own security program and kind of bring that to the world, right, to your customers, right? Now, the next step there is help me build or guide me building my program, and our platform kind of naturally does that in a number of ways. Now, from a pain, kind of threshold way, that really the pain that I felt and my co-founder felt was really about the security programs of third parties, and that's really what that pain and having to deal with that is really what led us to focus on third party cyber risk management. And it's actually that is kind of naturally branched out into these other areas, but it's really because where we felt the pain is really what led us to focus on that part of the problem. But you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
It is the technology and the approach is very portable to other areas, and today the platform, as you build your trust program and you can answer questionnaires in a completely automated way and using AI on the platform through a technology called IQR. As you build that profile, which is really just uploading materials, the platform gives you guidance and gives you feedback and says the program you built is appropriate for this sort of data and these sorts of customers, right? And that's something that we're definitely going to be building on in the future. Now, we do see that as distinct from like the Dratas and the Vantas of the world, which they're really focused on building as many APIs as they can into different technologies to gather compliance data, and then automating the evidence gathering, packaging that up in the way that folks like EY and Coldfire and KPMG, want to see when they're doing their assessments, right? And so it's a bit of a different problem, different animal for us. For us, we see those as valuable data sources, right? But there is, in terms of achieving assurance, it does take something more than just gathering data from, let's say, APIs, right? Because there's always that question. So let's say you've hooked up to AWS, for instance, to pull information on how you manage authentication, right? There's always that question, does the scope of that evidence that we just pulled, is that the whole story, right? Is that everything that's relevant, let's say, for the products and services, right? And that always boils down to some human element and typically some qualified third party, right? And measuring all these things in mass usually needs to be reflected across an industry standard. Folks want to see that across NIST or across ISO or across AICPA or high trust or whatever it might be, depending typically on their industry and region. And so our approach and kind of where we sit allows us to leverage all those components in order to really give the best picture that's appropriate for kind of trade and commerce. Our vision is to become the largest global provider of risk intelligence on the planet, but also the de facto standard for business to business transactions. So it is really how to use this data to enable business transactions and trust in the most meaningful and accurate way possible.
Interesting.
All right, so I'll give you the last softball. Dan, you gave us like a lot of stuff to talk about. So the last one, so your product vision of your company, like where do you think, two things, where do you think your company's going? And it coincides with really the bigger questions, where do you think this industry is going? Because this is an industry that is very fragmented right now. You talked about people spurring off on the governance or compliance section. You looked at scorecard, you look at all these things. Where is third-party trust going from a technology point of view, from a business point of view? And where is, I'm just going to go with the CISO one, VISO going with this type of technology?
Yeah, yeah. So where is TPRM going? So TPRM has traditionally been, we talked about it being questionnaire based. We've talked a lot about, we've mentioned standards, and everybody has their different favorite standard and all those things. Now that stuff is all language, right? And when my co-founder and I started focusing on this problem in 2016 and shared our vision together, um, of automating this, really revolutionizing this space with AI-based technologies, that's when we first started working on this problem. And I mentioned earlier, we filed our first patents in 2017, and then we started building prototypes and building models. We were at Lending Club at the time, we went there to ASAP, which is an entirely AI focused company, right? There we got to work with some of the best AI researchers in the world, building tools specifically using AI-based technologies, and particularly generative AI, and a suite of other AI-based technologies. And this allowed us to take a really different approach. Now, I would say it was actually challenging in 2020 to essentially talk about and market AI-based TPRM. CISOs are highly skeptical individuals in general, and highly skeptical of AI. And so, so was I, and so am I, with regard to tools. And, the last thing that I needed as a CISO was like an AI-based SIM that gave me 1,000 alerts at 50% confidence, and I needed 50 people to like sift through all the garbage to figure out what things were meaningful, right? So, and for a while we had lots of tools that just touted AI, and you'd check into it and there was really nothing to it, right? So it was a hard story to tell. And we actually didn't focus that much on it. We focused on automation, right? Because an operational efficiency and accuracy, which did wonders. We've built an incredible business with that. But now the world actually knows what generative AI is, and the fact that our platform uses generative AI, and specifically a type of generative AI that's highly specialized called retrieval augmented generation, which is actually unlike something like ChatGPT, which we're all familiar with generative AI, and which also uses large language models and GPTs. What's different is that the information and responses that all happen in natural language are grounded on information, on a specific data set of information. So let's say on our platform, you're assessing a company, we've gathered a body of data and information and artifacts from that company. In the platform, you can actually just ask a question. You can ask any question, and you're going to get an answer. And that answer is going to come to you in natural conversational language, and it's going to be accurate, nearly 100% accuracy, and it's going to have references to all the different artifacts that had relevant information, even if the words don't match at all, right? And then there's going to be lots of metadata on the assurance levels of those different artifacts and the standards that they're attributed to, and how old they are, and who created them, all sorts of valuable stuff, right? And so, as you can see from that example, this concept of sending 1,000 questions, to a company about their security program is meaningless, right? It's totally unnecessary now, right? Why have the middle person, which is again a salesperson probably, filtering that information and answering those questions? Why not just go right to the data, right? And why not get all that valuable meta information too? Like, oh, they've got multi-factor authentication. Here's how it's designed. Here's how it works. Here's the products that they use for it. And by the way, this was audited in their SOC 2 type 2, right? Rather than just like they said yes to that line on the questionnaire, right? The former is way more valuable, right? Of
Sure.
information, right? So even as soon as a year from now, CRM is going to be completely different. Yeah, definitely. dominated, by the approach that we're taking. It is absolutely going to replace the painful questionnaires we've been suffering through for the last 20 years.
So, Paul, I have to ask you before I let Jeremy say anything. So what is the top 3 things that people get screwed on? Like, what is the top 3? AI looks at you, going through my 853, and you know what? X, Y, and Z. They're so consistent that I don't even know why I have AI. I mean, what is it that everybody's kind of like, every time you do a risk assessment, what's the big ones that people miss?
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
So that is a great question. And the answer is probably going to be a little disappointing for you, but I'll give some interesting ones too.
Okay.
So the first thing that is this concept of assurance, right? Now, if all you can do is tell me have these controls in place, that's not a ton of assurance. And if I'm a big bank that's about to share, half the country's social security numbers with you, well, that's probably not enough assurance, right? And so you get assurance from qualified third parties using relevant standards, and digging deep into your program. So that's one thing that comes up, fairly frequently. The next thing is controls that are not that aren't always covered in standardized audits and assessments, right? And this is where it's going to kind of bore you a little bit, because I'm sure you folks know this, but ubiquitous and quality multi-factor authentication, right? In meaningful encryption at rest, really effective incident response, and lastly, but certainly not least, effective software development lifecycle, right? These things that I mentioned, especially the last two, are much easier said than done, right? And so these things come up frequently, right? They're challenging not only for companies but for the industry, and so they do come up for sure.
What would you say are if you had to give advice to that future CISO or that aspiring CISO out there, what would you say to them? Kids graduating from college, they come out with their CISSP, maybe they've got a CISM, or they got some alphabet soup, certs that they've picked up along the way.
Make him a CISO.
But yeah, I've got all these certifications. I am so smart now, right? All 3 of us have cut our teeth in the industry, right? So we kind of deserve to be where we are because of the hills that we've had to climb, and we're old. Well, speaking for myself and Chris. But what is the advice that you would give to somebody who wants to be a CISO, and what would you say their career path should look like?
Yeah. So there's 2 kind of blocking and tackling things that I'll mention, and then I'll mention a little bit more on the kind of the business strategy side. But the blocking and tackling is, I feel like it's really important as the CISO to have as much of an understanding of application security and software security as you possibly can. I really see it as, where the rubber meets the road. And so I see that as really, really important, and just something that that you need to continually be investing in your own expertise and the expertise of your team on. Obviously, even more if you're at a company that is actively developing software, which most are to some degree somewhere, right? The next one is with regard to incident response, and I'm sure probably resonates with you all, given the space that you're in. But that incident response, how well you're doing and whether any of it means anything at all, right? And incident response is not easy. Making sure that you are generating every type of log file, making sure that it's all going to the right place, making sure, and that means dealing with a ton of people that really don't want that to help you make that happen, right? And then ensuring that that you know everything you could possibly know about your environment and about the assets in your environment, is just incredibly critical, and it's an incredibly critical exercise. And doing that is so important. I accidentally used the metaphor already. Rubber meets the road, but threat and incident response engineering tire. That's what I called it. You know, at Lending Club. So I literally referred to it as where the rubber meets the road. I really do believe that. And so so that's kind of the second thing. Your company has to be doing that, has to be good at it. It's always hard because it seems like nothing but a cost center to the business, and it's expensive. But you just have to do it. Otherwise, you're not really doing anything. You're just kind of pretending. Then now going out of that into like the business of being a CISO and being successful. You are a business leader. You need to understand the business. You need to help the business make business decisions. That means you've got to be a great business partner. It means that you're not the department of no. It means you're the department of yes, and this is what the consequences will be, and this is what we have to do if we want to do that, right? And you have to understand business risk. You have to understand, you know, what it means to not make the money, to not be successful, to add friction to the business process, right? You need to understand those things so you can have meaningful conversations with business stakeholders. And so, you know, that's one of the things that's been so rewarding with VISO, and it was in some ways unexpected. You know, I remember when it came up with our first or second customer, which is they're part of GM Cruise Automation, the self-driving car division of GM. They'd actually stood up a few different teams that essentially failed, that ultimately turned over in running third-party cyber management. They tried 4 different platforms, and they eventually received a vote of no confidence and were bypassed in the procurement process by the business because they couldn't give kind of actionable or consistent results. They couldn't do it in a timely way, and they were slowing everybody down. That's when they came to us and, you know, rolled the dice on a new company with a new approach. And in the first couple of months, we had eliminated their entire backlog. We were really excited. You know, we approached them, said, hey, can we interview you guys, see how it's going? And what we heard was that we had essentially reinvented their security team, and that this being such a visible process, they essentially got feedback from other departments and other teams of like, wow, we need to up our game, and that they were the model for innovation and efficiency to which other teams aspired. And obviously, I mean,
that's high praise right there.
Right. I mean, they were enjoying the thing, you know, that as practitioners, my co-founder and I had wished we'd had, which was really why we built the company. So enormously, you know, fulfilling, and so that's, you know, that's why we do it. We're trying to create that experience for every CISO and every security team out there.
Very interesting. It's aspirational, right? To go from being, or inspirational even, to go from being, you know, entry, just getting into computing as a young person, and then having a career where you get to leapfrog through the information security industry, eventually landing as CISO multiple times, and now as a founder and a CEO of a cyber company. I mean, it should be everybody's.
I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, absolutely, and it should be everybody's dream. At least all the computer science nerds out there listening to us, right? Security and application development; those are the 2 places you want to go.
Well, wow. Well, you said it. I mean, I've just been so fortunate to be at a time where there's just been so much digital transformation, where you might hire one company to do one thing, you know, 10 years ago or something. You know, now you might hire 20 companies doing all specialized little things, right? And so
it's going to be an AI bot that's going to do it for you. And now that's a whole nother level of third-party risk assessment that we have to figure out how to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it. That's a very interesting scenario, and it plays into some of the things that we do with fourth party, because we actually do a lot of work with fourth party and nth party risk at this
Okay.
point too. But we'll have to get into a
Well, I
bot
was just
chose
saying,
my vendor risk.
there you go. How do you describe, so first party means yourself, third party means your immediate vendor. What is fourth party referring to?
Yeah, so fourth party is their vendors. And then nth party is their vendors on and so on and so forth.
The
Right.
supply,
And
the supply chain.
I'm my old grandpa. Yeah, eventually they're going to
Yes.
use you, and you're going to, oh my God, we're the we're the problem.
So we're the customer
Yeah.
and the problem.
Interestingly, similarly to how a SIM is joining information on so many different data sources, and with the metaphor you've depicted in your background there, Chris, similarly, you're looking at third parties in the same way, right? This ecosystem of third parties, and where your data is traversing various links with various degrees of connection, similar to something like LinkedIn. Is our platform has a feature that we call a risk network, where we mine from both public sources and from artifacts, products and services, and upstream and downstream relationships between companies, allowing companies to monitor not only their third parties, but also their nth parties, if you will.
Hey, Jeremy, I was thinking about coding a new website called Geek Out instead of LinkedIn. And it's for people that just want to have a talk without all the marketing, where you can like actually do something, and you just boot them when they start doing the marketing crap.
Yeah.
I know.
They also used to be called chat boards, right? Or
I was going to say
channels.
BBSs.
BBSs, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of that today when somebody brought something up, and I go, man, this reminds me of the BBS days. No, Paul, it's excellent. It was like, I don't want to keep on going because we'll go for hours. We have before, and it's not a good thing. Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I've got like a whole sheet of other stuff, but I think, who knows, maybe we'll drink some more and do some more stuff after that. Jeremy? Yeah, I mean, it's, I'm fascinated. First of all, I think, the language approach is excellent. I think there's a very interesting approach to this problem, because to tell you the truth, like you brought up Vanta, well, Jeremy brought up Vanta. I think Vanta's SOC 2 compliance, which is a little bit different than third-party risk. And
Right.
Maybe we, if you want to say what's the difference, cool. If not, all right. But overall, I think this is a very fascinating idea that you've got. It's is it going well? You guys are doing good?
It's going great. It's growing great. We are bringing on new customers as fast as we possibly can. We've got customers with many thousands of third parties on the platform. Across our customers, they've been able to cover 98.4% of their third parties. So for the first time, giving companies the ability to gain complete visibility into their entire program.
That one
for some of them, that means actually reducing the risk by 95% because they lacked so much visibility before.
Jeremy, Paul, just out of curiosity, so what is the risk of Microsoft as a third party?
Or Google?
That's funny. Somebody came to me and actually a customer that actually before they came a customer, they were using one of the ratings vendors, and they told me, they said Microsoft has a D, right, on this ratings vendors platform. And they were like, could Microsoft security really be that bad? And I had to explain. I was like, that's measuring their website. Their website is supporting ciphers since the beginning of time, because they support IE Stone Age, whatever that version is. And it's just marketing data. They don't care, right?
How much spam do you get with Microsoft email? I will tell you, that is the evidence or the artifacts of the type of third party you're dealing. Though, Jeremy, I don't know if you saw the recent Apple release of the operating system. They now have a feature to share your password with others, which means that not only forget the EULA, bypassing Netflix and crap like that, but now it's opposite of FISMA. FISMA requires one user ID to be logged in, and Microsoft has now allowed you to share your ID with anybody. So I don't know how Microsoft is FISMA compliant, but that's a different story.
Convenience and security. battling it out.
It's the consumer versus the business, though. I think that's the friction there. You have the consumers who want a platform that's super easy to use, that they can share with their friends, their grandparents, their children. I share. We go to my kids come over or their friends come over. They share the Wi-Fi password to the guest network through their iPhone. I'm okay with that because they're not actually sharing the actual password, right? It's basically like a trust. They're granting trust to the Wi-Fi through this known party.
No, Jeremy, I'm hearing you're really bad nth party risk to these companies.
Yeah. All right, so we have some lightning round questions for you, Paul.
Oh, we do.
Sure.
Okay.
There we go. Ready?
Yeah.
These should be near single word answers.
Okay.
Favorite sport?
Basketball.
Why is it not hockey?
Oh yeah, that's
my co-founder's favorite sport, and I have to have a different one.
Good answer. Favorite basketball team?
The Warriors.
Do you think they'll win the championship again? Ever?
At some point. I don't know when though.
2022, 22. Yeah, they're in the rebuild phase.
They're in the rebuild phase.
Is Steph Curry a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
Ooh, hesitation.
That sounds like a trick question. I'm going to say yes.
Why? What's the subtext?
I
there?
just don't. I don't have enough depth to know like what the rules are. What first ballot means. So
first time they're eligible to be voted into the Hall of Fame. They are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Paul, first answer was correct.
Yes. He invented
just like on standardized tests.
No, he did not invent his.
Usually correct, right?
His dad invented the 3-point shot. Dale Curry.
That's true, but his son perfected it.
Yeah. But Virginia Tech owns that. For Paul, favorite guitar brand?
Ooh,
that's a great one. I'm gonna say none.
Ooh.
What's your
I'm
daily
not
player?
as happy as any of my guitars as I should be.
Oh.
What's your daily player?
What was that next question, Jeremy?
What's your daily player? What do you play daily? Or what is the thing that you pick up and use the most?
The thing that I use the most is actually custom built by yours truly. Yeah.
Oh, it was so close.
20 years ago. It's a Strat.
I was gonna say custom 24. So I got my PRS.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I got my PRS custom 24 down here. I got my Modern Eagle. I would be a PRS fan, but
and maybe if I had one, maybe that would be the one.
As long as you didn't say Ibanez, that would be the correct answer, not Ibanez.
Anything fits.
Lead guitarist, Paul. Lead guitarist.
Favorite lead guitarist?
Van Halen.
Now they didn't have a rhythm guitarist, so.
I mean, he really invented double hammering, where you hammer with two hands. I would go with, I hate to say it because I'm a big Grissom fan, but Mark Knopfler is probably my favorite.
Oh, I love Mark Knopfler.
And then there's the outskirts on the PRS world. There's Davey Knowles, which is it was a really outlier, and Mark Grissom, but what's really good but he's a very good songwriter. Sting. I mean, Sting is crazy.
He's really good too. It's amazing, huh? That guy's talent's just like.
Oh my God, he has hands the size of Andre the Giant. If you ever play Every Breath You Take and you say you can span that naturally, oh my God, those are big.
His talent is just too unfair. I have a hard time thinking about him because it's just so unfair, right? To be so good at so many things. But
I mean, he
mentioned Mark Knopfler. That reminded me of Chet Atkins. That's another guitarist that I love as well.
Sweet. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And then of course, you gotta go favorite band.
Favorite band. My favorite band is actually King Crimson.
Oh, metal.
Wow. That was unexpected.
So how long have you been a metalhead?
So I've liked metal among lots of other things. Gosh, since metal existed, I guess, which has got to be like, I guess, somewhere.
Jeremy, this is really scary, but who the other guitarist that we interviewed was Dave Mayberry, who is also a heavy metal guitar player. And by the way, he worked for Security Scorecard. That is
Wow, is there something
that is-
about metal and TPRM?
That's awesome. Yeah,
There's another.
Yeah, I need to open up another. Even the big cans, you run out of them eventually.
eventually, yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Paul,
Valente.
I appreciate it. You know, our lightning rounds were very, very tense. Jeremy, anything else, man? Are you done?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I just wanted to say thank you. Actually, I do have one question, one final
Okay.
question before we let our guests leave.
Yeah.
If I want to work with VISO Trust and I want to become a user of your platform, can you give me a little bit of an idea of what am I looking at price? If it's too proprietary, we understand, but kind of give us a sense for what it's like, how long is the onboarding? What does that workflow look like?
Yeah, great questions. We actually just released last week, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago now, freemium offering, which anybody can come to our website
That's pricey.
and self-register and kick off AI-based assessments. So we really wanted to democratize this space and allow people to see how easy and how powerful this technology really is. So hopefully that answers your question. Really, it takes nothing to get started.
Nice.
And beyond that, it's essentially economies of scale, right? The more third parties you're dealing with, the less you're going to pay per third party.
Awesome.
But always a savings over any sort of manual efforts, and a huge savings on risk.
Yeah,
ultimately.
it's great. Well, Chris, any last questions for you? Any parting
I'm
thoughts?
good. I'm good. I'm excited. Actually, this was very good, Paul. I
Yeah.
think that exciting, a new leaf. I mean, believe it or not, like you brought up like lending trade. Like I got my money in lending trade. So I always kept on going to your bio. I'm like, man, I've been throwing too much money at you. But yeah, this was no excellent, and this is a really refreshing way of third party. You have to say that in the very beginning, I think you hit the nail on the head, which is that everybody I know looks at like your profile, and I'll tell you, security scorecard asking me what type of certificate I'm using my website for my web makes absolutely no. You've got security posture, not even in the same world,
No.
right? And I kind of laugh at those people. So I think you kind of had me interesting from the very beginning. I think that you have a very refreshing way of looking at third-party risk, and I hope that the rest of the industry takes notice and goes that way.
Yeah,
Jeremy?
absolutely. Yeah, and I think for all of our listeners out there, take a look at VISO Trust's website, sign up for their freemium model, get a taste for it. TPM, third party risk management. So much fun.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you for joining us. Season 3, episode 1. Thank you for being a part of that. And subscribe. There's a button here, maybe a button here. I don't know. Kingsley is going to put them on there at some point, and we'll figure it all out later.
Awesome.
Chris and Jeremy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a delight, and thanks to all the listeners.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.